Then we have APC primaries in Gige Nnamani joint presidential race. Oshun appointees go to Oshun appointees to go, that is, and then we have 7 resign in Kano, and of course NEC to OK guidelines. This story is about the APC primaries, and details of this can be gotten on pages 3, 5, and 27. On pages 2 and 5, we have the following stories. A lecturer dies 1 week after release by kidnappers on page 2. And then 2 pilots killed in Air Force trainer jet crash. That's on page 5. Under the main plate, we have a story on page 2 again, and that is 3 die, 19 injured in explosion. And then, of course, on page 2 still, bandits dump bodies of hostages in Kaduna. The main story on the Nation newspaper is battle for PDP ticket hots up as nomination closes today. Now the riders are: Tumble submits form, says I will unite Nigerians. The second rider is Governor Wike, failed me or we lose. The third one is Obi meets delegates, and the final rider here is will be fair to all. Are you assured? That's the chairman of the PDP. Moving down, Buhari, we won't allow anybody to destabilize Nigeria. We get details of that on page 4. And then Tinubu raises smear campaign alert, still on page 4. At the foot of the page, we have the following stories. One on page 3, Ade Jobi is false PRO. That's the new PRO of the Nigerian Police Force. And still on page 3, we have Kwankwaso picks NNPP forms. And then finally, on page 3, still Shoyinka folds pardon for Darie and Nyame. Let's look at the pilot newspaper again and then see what we have there. The pilot newspaper, please, before Kiden takes up the other paper he has. The pilot newspaper, please. There are some few stories here on the front page, very interesting ones for that matter. We have on page 7, FCTA seals federal government offices over 10 billion naira debt. FCTA seals federal government offices over 10 million naira debt. And on page 5, another Nigerian Air Force aircraft crashes in Kaduna. The main story on the pilot, Nigerian pilot, that is, 2023 no to interim government. And the riders are: Governor Uzodinma rejects suggestion for an interim government, says it's a call for anarchy. The second rider says 1999 Constitution as amended makes no provision for an interim government. And the third rider is that anyone proposing any process not contained in the 1999 Constitution should send such to the National Assembly. And the final rider here assures that his administration is tackling banditry headlong, and details of all this can be gotten on page 8. Moving down, Nigerian pilot on page 9, federal government renames National Theatre. Still on page 9, gunmen kill 3 Kaduna residents over delayed ransom. And on page 5, we don't want Buhari to face trial at ICC after leaving office, says the presidency. And on page 6, Governor Duri reflects, says insecurity worse now than in 2015. And on page 9, Ramadan, Muslims, Christians break fast to foster peaceful coexistence in Plateau. And finally, at the foot of the page, we have this story on page 6 that says, IMF raises Nigeria's 2022 growth focus to 3.4%. Kirian?
All right, let's go over to the Punch newspaper. The Punch newspaper above the name flag, power generation crashes by 903 megawatts. National grid crisis persists. That's on page 17. Drop your presidential beats. Afenifere leader tells Tinubu and Shibajo. That's on pages 9 and 28. Another NAF jet crashes in Kaduna. 2 feared killed. That's on page 8. Also on page 8, it is finished. Shoyinka Sani condemned Darie Nyame's pardon. Now, 10 banks lent customers 2.9 trillion naira in 12 months, according to report. It's on page 17. Oil price. IMF upgrades Nigeria's economic growth forecast to 3.4%. That's also on page 17. Now, the lead story is on the Electoral Act. Presidency, OSGF disagree over Buhari minister's refusal to resign. 3 riders to that. Like Amechi Ngige declares for presidency, refuses to leave office. Ganduje, Oyetola, OK resignation of appointees contesting 2023 polls. Marafa faction warns APC against repeating Zamfara 2019 mistake. Now, below the photo story, the Punch newspaper, I won't allow anyone to destabilize Nigeria, Buhari tells governors and service chiefs. Details on page 28. Bandits threaten to kill more kidnapped victims, demand 20 million naira. That's on page 11. Katsina CJ inaugurates election petitions tribunal, warns against misconduct. Also in page 11. Page 12 has this story. AEBP says government buildings in ATT over 10 billion naira debt. Now at the bottom, 4 children, 16 passengers die as speeding Bauchi vehicles explode. On pages 4 and 5. Christian Sergio Act, school, parents, pupils meet police today. It's also on pages 4 and 5. Despite CBN clampdown, Nigerians traded 316 billion Bitcoin in 2021. That's on page 18. Bayo, it's time for you to come in here.
Our hearts must go out to 2 Nigerian Air Force pilots who paid the supreme sacrifice yesterday while training at the 401 training school in Kaduna. Their aircraft were said to have crashed at the Nigerian Air Force Base, Kaduna. This is coming under 1 year when it may be recalled that a Beechcraft 350 aircraft also crashed at the Kaduna International Airport in May 2021. At that time, the Chief of Army Staff, Major General Ibrahim Atairu, and 10 other officers were on board and all of them were killed. The Chief of Air Staff, the Chief of Army Staff was then going to a passing out parade of some recruits of the armed forces.
But questions could be asked about this. Well, it may not be incessant, but we've had that over time. Crashing of Nigerian Air Force, planes. Why is that so? Is it a lack of training, or is it is it lack of maintenance, or what? I also want to believe that some of the aircraft should have a kind of escape plan, escape route. When you discover that you cannot control the plane, you just eject yourself or something. I don't know whether such planes have that provision.
You recall that there was a pilot of the jet fighter pilot who bailed out, and luckily he survived and he was welcomed back to base. But these ones were pilots who were in training. Until the details are out, and usually because of security reasons, they won't publish the details. Something must have gone wrong. Don't forget that they are training pilot officers who were undergoing training, and when you are undergoing training, things can go wrong.
Well, there must be a trained pilot who is now
at the initial stage. A pilot who is being trained will go with an experienced pilot, but there comes a time when the trainee pilot or trainee pilots are allowed to go on their own. Perhaps this is one of the instances, and unfortunately, we lost the officers. There has been another bomb explosion in which some people say 3 persons, others are saying 3 persons, others are saying 7 persons were killed in Taraba. The initial report has said that it happened at a cattle market in Iwari, but a witness indicated that many people had gathered at a beer parlor at Iwari, and somebody just threw an object which exploded into the bar and fled. Iwari is a cattle market town which is about how many kilometers, they said, from Jalingo. The spokesman for the Jalingo Police Command, the Taraba Police Command, DSP Usman Abdullahi, has confirmed the story, and he says that the persons that were injured there were evacuated to the Federal Medical Center, Jalingo. President Muhammadu Buhari has reiterated that his administration will not allow anyone to attempt to destabilize Nigeria. He said so while hosting some dignitaries to iftar dinner. Iftar is the breaking of the fast during Ramadan. and his guests included some governors, some ministers, and head of federal agencies. The president expressed worry why people will allow themselves to be subject and destabilize their own country. He says that his administration will not take such. Meanwhile, in the political scene, aspirants are beginning to emerge on the increase. The Punch reports that the presidency and office of the secretary to the government of the federation are in a kind of dilemma about who actually should issue a notification of resignation for 7 political appointees. The paper points out that ministers of transport and that of labor and employment who have declared intention to run are yet to resign. And when they found out, they said somebody in the presidency tells them that, well, if you go by the already examples there, in 36 states of the federation, it is the secretary to the state government that have issued circulars and guidelines on political appointees and how they should go about it. But in the office of the secretary to the government of the federation, an aide also pointed out that the secretary to the government of the federation is also an appointee of the president, and he cannot out of his own volition issue such directive because he needs to wait for his principal to give him such directive. It may be recalled that the president had expressed reservations about a section of the Electoral Act, specifically section 8412, which is the subject in contention about resigning before contesting the election. And you may also recall that a federal high court had directed the Attorney General of the Federation to delete that section from the Electoral Act. But in the meantime, there has been an appeal at the Owerri Division of the Court of Appeal, and that appeal has been allowed, for which the PDP has also joined, and it is sub judice now in court. On the subject of presidential aspirants, Minister of Labor and Employment, Dr. Chris Igige, has formally declared his intention to aspire to be the presidential candidate of the All Progressive Congress. Also declaring to run on Tuesday is the former Senate President, Senator Ken Nnamani. They both aspire to be flag bearer of the All Progressive Congress. Senator Rabiu Musa Kwankwaso, former governor of Kano State and now currently a senator of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, obtained the expression of interest form of nomination for 30 million, and it is for his intention to contest the presidency on the platform of New Nigeria People's Party. He says he had the opportunity to serve in the PDP as well as the APC, and he has found that the two parties do not have ideologies, and therefore
so now the flurry of people who are expressing interest to run for the presidency of this country, they're becoming so many. We have close to about 20 from the two parties who are contesting to rule this country. I think for the first time in the history of Nigeria we'll have that number from different parties contesting for the position of presidency. What is the attraction here? Because on a daily basis we keep having new declarations, and you had that of yesterday. I was not talking about Senator Ken Nnamani, former Senate President, also declaring to run for the presidency.
What is motivating them is simple. They are all aspiring to be president. They want to lead this country. And even it's not only on the All Progressive Congress, even the People's Democratic Party, the nomination form of the PDP, which Governor Aminu Waziri Tambuwal submitted his own form yesterday. And if you may have noticed, the PDP is closing nomination for submission today. So before the end of today, there will be more
declaration.
But for the two political parties, it is the primary session of the parties that will weed and sift the grains from the shaft. At the end of the day, each party will come with one flag bearer. Between now and then, we are going to have a lot of horse trading and a lot of position trading. The former Governor Peter Obi, who is also a candidate, has been at the forefront and he's campaigning that his stance is that the candidate that will emerge should be a candidate that has competence, not just consensus candidate. So you have several dimensions coming out from everyone trying to point out where they believe they have the best of strength.
Now before we let you go, on this issue of resignation, for those who are interested in going through primaries, who want to run for the presidency, the matter is in court at the moment.
Yes.
But then I learned that the National Assembly also appealed to the court to expedite action on that to see how the case could be concluded before the primaries.
Yeah, this is important because the primaries of the two political parties are coming around 28th of May or thereabouts. So that has to be concluded so that everybody will know the course they have to
But
take
who's sure
within
it's
the
not going
context
to
of
go
the law.
to a Supreme Court after appeal court? That's another aspect of it. Who is sure it's going to go to Supreme Court? That's bye.
That is left in the womb of time.
All right, we would have discussed this Chrisland Social Act, but time is not on our side.
Yes. The
Because
other one that we didn't discuss is that there's been a draw now for the 2023 African Cup of Nations. 32 nations are to compete in the Cup of Nations built for Cote d'Ivoire. Our Nigerian Super Eagles is now drawn into Group A and will be facing Sierra Leone, Guinea-Bissau, Sao Tome and Principe. From that group, one team is supposed to qualify.
And it so seems as if most of the members of the group are underdogs anyway, but you don't underrate underdogs anymore now.
There are no underdogs in football because you find what you describe as minions.
That's true.
Turning the apple cart.
That's true.
Against what you describe as the several times winners.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much, Bayo. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much. And of course, you watch Good Morning Nigeria. That was the newspaper review. We will now take a break. The program continues in a moment. Stay with us.
Don't just wake up your child. Wake up the champion in them. Give them energy to help them win every day with Milo at breakfast. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child. Milo.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency. A new edition of TV Guide is out, exclusively with Professor Umar Garba Dambata, Executive Vice Chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission, NCC.
We have unveiled the 622 as a toll-free line through which consumers can be able to lodge their complaints. And we have introduced the 112 as a national emergency number.
This edition is a compendium of mind-blowing stories for your reading pleasure, ranging from technology, entertainment, economy, media, politics, family, and lots more. Pick up your copy and get abreast with issues and trending features within our space. TV Guide, very incisive, very educative and compelling. Grab a copy at the vendor near you or any NTA station nationwide. TV Guide, your indispensable companion. As the 2023 elections draw near, remember, evil prospers when good men and women only wish for peace, but never take a step to make peaceful elections happen. Are you a father? Are you a mother? What are you saying to your children as elections approach? Have you warned them not to let themselves be used to cause violence? Have you explained to them what the consequences of electoral violence might be? Do your part to make peaceful elections happen. Talk to your children. Protect them from unscrupulous politicians who want to put them in harm's way, while their own children are comfortable at home, within, and outside the country. Let's join hands to make 2023 elections peaceful. This message is from the National Orientation Agency, NOAA.
Don't just wake up your child. Wake up the champion in them. Give them energy to help them win every day with Milo at breakfast. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child.
All right, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria up to this moment. And as a prompt for our conversation, let's take this background report as put together by Abdul Salam Jubril.
These days, not a day goes by without an incident of terrorist or bandit attack, kidnappings, abduction, and theft in various parts of the country. Kaduna to Zamfara, Plateau to Niger State has all proven to be hotspots of attacks by criminal elements. It is no gainsaying that Nigeria is witnessing an unprecedented level of insecurity, such as Boko Haram activities, banditry, kidnappings, farmers-herders clashes, and ethno-religious crisis. This has made national security threat to be a major issue, prompting huge allocations of the national budgets to security. The government has also provided fundamental surveillance, investigation of criminal-related offenses, heightened physical security measures around the country aimed at deterring or disrupting potential attacks, strengthening of security agencies through the provision of security facilities, and the development and broadcast of security tips in mass media. Despite these efforts though, the level of insecurity in the country is still high. Some experts maintain that government at all levels has not done enough by not confronting frontally the situation head-on and dealing with it decisively. Others have argued that the situation has a political undertone or inclination calculated to serve the interest of certain political interests disgruntled about the political manifestations in the country. With the lingering security challenges across the country today, what other approaches can be adopted to ameliorate the security challenge? Guests on the program will be speaking to issues on the lingering security challenge facing the country shortly.
And joining us in the studio to discuss this issue is Dr. Kabiru Adamu, Security Risk Management Expert. Welcome to Good Morning, Dr.
Thank you, Nadabu. Good morning.
Thank you very much. We also have here in the studio Aliyu Mahmoud, spokesman for the families of the victims of AK9 train incident. Well, thank you so much for coming up.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right, and let us introduce Major General Defiku, retired, immediate past Secretary General, retired Army, Navy, and Air Force Officers Association of Nigeria. He's a development management and security consultant, and also CEO of Damex Consultants Limited. He's joining us from our Jos studio. Good morning and welcome.
I want to say thank you. Good morning, Kieran and the team in the studio. Again, let me re-emphasize, I am retired Major Gabriel Adofiku, not Major General. I wouldn't mind promotion, but in retirement, that could be something else. Thank you very much and welcome.
Well, thank you for that correction, and we're glad to have you join us this morning on the program. And joining us via Zoom from Nairobi is Wing Commander Musa Salmanu, a retired security expert, and he's also the peace and security development expert. We're glad to have you this morning joining us on Good Morning Nigeria.
Much thank you for having Good Morning Nigeria.
All right, Naribo.
Okay, gentlemen, talking insecurity in Nigeria is no more news anyway, because it's a thing we've come to, live with, and of course, trying always and every time to see how solutions could be found to that. But Kabir, you've been part of this discussion for quite a while, for years, I would say, and then you've been at the forefront of trying to see how these security challenges in the country can be tackled, and this is our topic for this morning. This new dimension in security challenges in Nigeria. We started with the Boko Haram some 50 years ago, and of course that's now spread to almost every part of the country in the name of bandits and kidnappers. There's not forgetting the former hardest clashes and things like that. But at the moment, the most biting one is really the kidnapper issue. And of course, the Boko Haram thing is coming down because efforts are being made to get that one sorted out very soon. Tell us, this new dimension in the security challenges of Nigeria, how did it overlap?
Thank you, Nadabu. There are several drivers of insecurity within the country. Let's start with the issue of the weak criminal justice system that fails to arrest and punish offenders. For me, that's the beginning point, where people commit offenses, and then the inability of the criminal justice system to arrest them and punish them. So that deterrence element within every law, every community, unfortunately, has failed in Nigeria. And where you now have that first point, which is the weak or ineffective criminal justice system, tied to the second point, which is the poor economic indices, especially unemployment and the poverty level, then it means there is a pool of especially youths that are easily being recruited into the insecurity pool. So terrorists are able to recruit from them, criminals are able to recruit, and the one that worries me, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, is the political class. Okay. We don't talk about it often, but this is a reality among us. There is no part of Nigeria that you go to that you don't see youths being engaged as a layer of security by politicians, sometimes to protect them, and other times, unfortunately, to intimidate their supporters. So that's the second point. The third point is the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. There is most criminal activities, especially the types that we're discussing, kidnap for ransom, terrorism, name them, they rarely can be committed if there are no weapons by the perpetrator. In this instance, in certain offenses, they use military-grade weapon. The types of attacks that we've seen recently are not being done by your everyday weapon. These are sophisticated weapons that only military forces in certain countries have access to. In our own case, you have a significant number of non-state actors who have laid hands on these small arms and light weapons, or sometimes even military-grade weapons that are being used by them. Climate change is another driver of insecurity, and the inability of government to adapt to the consequences of climate change. We can discuss issues around desertification, the receding nature of some of the natural resources we have, such as Lake Chad, and then several other bodies that we have within the country. And then I also want to mention the value system that has been degraded to an extent that is extremely worrisome. Drug addiction also. So all of these drivers of insecurity, including the level of grievance, and we can classify this grievance into about three: the political grievance, the economic one, and to an extent the social one. All of these things together subsume what we describe as the drivers of insecurity. And unfortunately, almost all of them have been growing in terms of their size. So the effort by government, and there are two major efforts, the kinetic and the non-kinetic component, have not been able to address these core drivers of insecurity. And so that's really why we're where we are, unfortunately.
But really, when you talk about all these factors and reasons, about 6 of them you've mentioned, and unfortunately you said they're even growing, and that's why we have this overlap all over the place, spreading all over. I mean, these drivers, haven't there been any attempt, really, from your own point of view, haven't there been any attempt at trying to disaddress 1, 2, or 3 of them, than having to just leave them off our list?
No, a lot, especially the current administration. If we pick, let's say, poverty and unemployment, this is the government that came into power and promised to look at 3 core areas: corruption, diversification of the economy, and then insecurity. Now, the first two, addressing corruption and then the diversification of the economy, would have addressed significantly the issue of poverty and unemployment. Unfortunately, I guess there are structural issues within the country that have made that desire, that policy direction by government a little bit difficult to attempt. Now, when I say government, I am not referring to only one arm of government, which is the executive arm. I'm referring to the entirety of government, including the federal, state, and to an extent local government. This is something that we as a country would need to embrace and attempt to address. There is no level of policy implementation, once it's not embraced and supported by, especially at the state level and the local government, that will go to address all of these things that I've mentioned. So I think that's one major challenge, the inability of both levels of government, as well as the several arms of government, the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary, to come together and move in this direction, addressing all of these issues that I've mentioned. Again, some of these issues are transnational. Almost all of them, frankly. There is no level of achievement that Nigeria will have in them as long as our surrounding countries, Niger, Chad, Cameroon, name them, do not make some effort in addressing their own challenges as regards the things I've mentioned, then it would also impact on us. So to an extent, carrying them along, ensuring that we address these issues would also help us. And I think the Nigerian state has done quite well in terms of its international focus, especially within the West African region, in galvanizing the multilateral agencies, ECOWAS as an example, but more and needs to be done. And I'm hoping that this type of discussions would propagate that kind of action.
Okay, really several points that you have made here, which is, connected to the reasons why we are where we are today about insecurity in the country. But let's bring in Major Gabriel Adofiku, retired here. You just listened to the first speaker raising some very vital points with respect to why we are where we are today, with respect to insecurity. But what really bothers Nigerians most is the fact that the insecurity in Nigeria is expanding by the day, and of course it has touched several dimensions of criminality in the country. We'll talk about kidnapping for ransom. We have banditry, which is of course spread across the northern part of the country, and of course in the southeast of Nigeria we're beginning to see a new dimension to insecurity. Public infrastructure in that part of the country are being raised down, and a lot of other activities of criminals in that part of the country. So in your view, where are we, or how should this be tackled? And if you have what we may term as reasons why it is increasing, let us know.
Very much. Listening to my brother Kabiru there, it sounds like I was listening to a session in the United Nations. He has so put it encapsulatingly adequate. I want to thank you for that. But I think my perception about the security situation in Nigeria is slightly different from the general reasoning. Slightly different on this platform. First, what is security? What do we need to secure in Nigeria? Security, when we talk about protection of territorial integrity, is not just the physical geographical boundary line, but the components that are encapsulated in that physical geographical definition for a national prospect for the development of the nation. However, this consideration, these components of the territorial integrity goes beyond combat resistance. It includes such elements as education, agriculture, food, social value system, and a couple of other items that make up the development props or the development structural frameworks for any national development. Having said that much, in recent times, because of the experiences we are going on now, we have shifted 85% of our emphasis on the curative measures to deal with what I call the symptomic elements of security. Symptomic in the sense that what we are talking about now, kidnappings, bomb attacks, insurgency, banditry, the unknown gunmen attacks and all that. These, to me, are the symptomic elements of a fractured structure. And that fractured structure, good as it is that government is doing all and doing so much in combating these symptomic elements, I also want to say that a balanced approach should be quickly put in place, if not already in place, should be enhanced if already in place, in the other aspects. For example, you talk about massive unemployment. We have not talked about the educational system. Is our educational system reconcilable with the physical resources, potential and existing on the ground for the development of a highly productive equation for our economy? Similarly, you talk about the politics. Is the political culture built, that is partisan politics now, the political culture built around our politicking, does it ensure the sustenance, if not the protection, of our territorial integrity? The utterances of politicians in times of elections, the conduct of politicians in times of elections, and even with us in the media, we have the same challenge. Our media, for example, if you don't walk into a media house today willing to spit fire on what the government is not doing to secure everybody against bandits, against Boko Haram, against, then you are probably not talking sense enough. But the truth of the matter is that we must evolve that comprehensive understanding that the base fact is we want to secure something called Nigeria. And to secure that something called Nigeria, every aspect of the human endeavor in relation with available physical, God-given, or what the language, endowed resources of the country should be balanced and worked on. These are the gaps. It is these gaps that are manifesting now in the symptoms we see in banditry, in kidnappings, in insurgency, and even in Boko Haram. If we had these elements, fundamental structural elements, properly addressed and balanced in our development process, I want to believe and think that the security situation would have been easier to deal with. For example, a very simple illustration. We don't have a clear understanding of our demographic structure. Simple population census, we are unable to conduct a successful one. Most right from the local government onto the federal government. Most of our analysis are based on questionable data. And if you have that for any reason, at the international level, you're looking at plus or minus 20% failure or 20% deficit. But here, you are thinking about 60, 70%, out of line, facts available to you. These are the fundamental elements we should be looking at now in struggling to balance up. Every day, the government is doing everything, putting every resources into solving the symptomatic aspects. And for this moment, I'd like to quickly say that I pass on my sympathy to my young ones. I call them my sons, who just passed on yesterday in that crash. But then that is the hazard of the job. I don't want to preoccupy us with that. The truth of the matter is, for us to balance the security management situation in this country, these fundamental aspects should also be upgraded as fast as we can, even as we said. For example, the military hardwares we need to buy. We cry to other countries, we beg other countries to pay and get equipment, when we know that if we had a well-situated and structured economic structure functioning in the last 40 years. For example, now we wouldn't be looking for certain basic equipment to be imported from other countries. These are the areas I feel that we should now be looking at. How can we quickly balance up this? I'm not saying it is wrong to deal with the symptoms. Yes, we have to be alive to do any balancing. So there is a need, and I agree with the government, the way the government is pushing hard to deal with the symptomatic elements. But the fact remains, these fundamental causative platforms, we need to begin to address them with the vigor they require. Thank you.
Nalabo, I'm so curious about the fact that we are raising fundamental issues or the social elements, as you put it, that precipitated the level we are now on insecurity in the country. But from the analysis, it does appear that it's something that will take perhaps a longer time. We're talking about policies. You're talking about, government perhaps devising means of ensuring that every section of the country or demography the country is taken care of in terms of. But again, in countries where there is good economic management, we still have criminals. But what we're saying in Nigeria is that the level of criminality is so high. For instance, a kidnapper who has been receiving ransom for the past 1 or 2 years could have gotten enough money to start a business if he wants to do that. But in our own case, it is multiplying. They are even recruiting people to, it's like a daily business now that people have chosen. Not necessarily because of economy, not necessarily because he wants to start a business, he doesn't have the fund to do that. Now you are being paid ransom, yet you are still in that business. So which means that is a different ballgame altogether. That's the Nigerian situation.
Yeah, truly speaking, Kieran, but the two speakers have really spoken from various angles. While Kabir is talking about, the reasons behind where we are at the moment, and from the point of view of the existing, structure on the ground, Major Gabriel looks at it from a very holistic point of view, and that is why we bring in here retired Wing Commander, Musa Salmanu. You've heard the two speakers, talk, and of course, I don't know from which perspective, rather from which angle, would you look at the current situation of insecurity in Nigeria, and what do you think about it? Why are we where we are? Are you in tandem with the two speakers, or with any one of them, or do you have any other perspective or different standing on this?
Well, thank you very much. And like you said, I will agree with all the speakers, the first two speakers, because they try to look at it from the issues of root causes, both Kabiru and Major Gabriel. So I go in line, I go along with what they have said. However, what I will add, or where I'll try to look at, is in terms of the response, for example. If we look at these issues the root causes and the manifestations, but how have we been able to respond to them? And as you alluded, why is it that there is so much increase instead of, or despite efforts that are being made by government in terms of resources, in terms of everything, policies, and so on and so forth? For me, what I will say is that there are basic issues, like, for example, I think we need to improve on our sincerity of purpose at all levels, both governmental levels, societal levels, and even governmental and societal levels, whereby the people that are charged with the responsibility of response to this, either in terms of kinetic, as the doctor said, or in terms of even policies, what is, or to what extent are we sincere in marshalling out these responses and implementing them? Then also the issue of accountability. How accountable are the people charged with these responsibilities? Are we holding them to account? That's both at also here at institutional level, but also at societal level. Are we holding them to account and asking for them to take responsibility or take charge of what they have been saddled with? Then thirdly, I think the issue of, and closely related to what the doctor talked about, is the issue of consequence. What is the consequence of bad behavior? People do involve in most of these things because there are no repercussions. People get away with it. People kidnap and get ransom and go ahead to spend that ransom without any consequence. So it encourages people to go into that, for example, to go into kidnapping because it pays. It is short-term, less effort, but high-paying job, which in our instance, the repercussion is not very much, or it just happens once in a while. So I think if we put all this together and see how we address these issues, we're already at a stage whereby in addressing the root causes, very important, we have to look at the root causes and address them. But we have to do that side by side by tackling the manifestations. And in tackling the manifestations, for example, we can take it in two broad ways. That's the kinetic and the non-kinetic. We can't run away from the fact that we have to use kinetic means to subdue people, or to subdue those people, the non-state actors that have shown every day or day in, day out, having the capacity to do damage or cause damage to society or communities. They have to be subdued using kinetic means. But at the same time, we have to evolve or open ways of ensuring that there is dialogue between communities, dialogue between actors, that's both state and non-state, and non-state, and generally a situation whereby where people or these outlaws are being pushed, but also there are rooms for amends. There are rooms to ensure that those that are willing to lay down their arms and to come back to the side of order and so on are given a room, or there is a system to accommodate that, to ensure that perpetrators are dealt with in a way that ensures justice for both, or for everyone, both perpetrators and the victims. I think if we evolve such measures, we can handle the manifestations, but at the same time bringing up policies that ensure that the root causes are tackled long term.
We're going to return to you because of part of the issue, points that you raised with respect to tackling the manifestations kinetically, because of course if you have criminals who are wielding machine guns and what have you, it will be difficult to actually bring them to the table for any form of conversation until you subdue them to a level. Now let's bring in Aliyu Mahmood, spokesman, families of the victims of AK-9 train incident. You are here for a special reason, and they would like to know what you actually know about the situation of the victims of that attack? Because, of course, from judging by your position, victims as well. So, what is the situation at the moment?
Well, good morning, Nigeria. The situation is so bleak. It's not something that I can say I have much knowledge about the position or the state of affairs where they are in captivity. Because as it is, we were only contacted once, and after that contact, nothing came through. So just like the world knows very little about it, it's the same situation with us as well. The only thing we can say is the government has actually said that they're on top of the matter, which we hope is gaining grounds. And we're only praying that where they are, they're trying as much as possible to stay alive. Because as you know, in captivity, in terms of, how do I put it, in terms of interaction, the whole environment is inhumane. The whole environment is hostile. So you can only try to hold up the best you can, and we'll keep praying and pleading.
Okay, we heard earlier on that the kidnappers were not actually requesting for ransom, that they have their reason for kidnapping on that occasion. Do you know anything about that? Is there, when you were contacted, you say you were contacted only once. When you were contacted, what were they saying? What is the line of their, what kind of statement were they making?
Well, the contact, I would say, in my own opinion, was proof of life, just to tell the family members that they have your loved ones and they're alive, but we can ascertain whether they're healthy or not. And based on the clip that was released on social media, they said that they don't want money, that the government knows what they want. So as far as we know, that's the information that came across. And the fact that we're not in contact with them, we can't know what exactly they're demanding from the government.
But there are pressures, Mr. Mahmoud, really. One must say that you cannot be free from pressure from families of those who are in captivity. And indeed, the pressure must be so high that sometimes it may give you some sleepless nights. I don't know how you're coping up with that, because it's a situation of loved ones being in the bush for quite a while, and especially in this Ramadan period. I don't know. How are you coping with this pressure? As we can see on the social media, a lot of them have been coming out to even assist you, and of course, some other families in talking to the government and talking to the, abductors.
Well, I must say, Mr. Nadawa, that we're really, really traumatized, and it is really taking a toll on all of us, because some of these victims have little children at home that are always looking at the door. Whenever there's a knock on the door, they expect their parents to come in. And the fact that that is not attainable anytime soon, based on what is transpiring. So it's really, really difficult, a very, very difficult moment for us. And you can only imagine what they're going through. Whatever it is we're trying to do in terms of interaction, be it sleep, be it eat, be it, use the restroom, you always have them in mind. What are they going through? How are they sorting out themselves in such a situation? So it's not something words can explain in terms of how we're feeling at the moment. Yes.
All right, we know how it is because to have your loved ones somewhere with abductors is not easy to endure, and some of the families who have their loved ones, captured, by unknown men, unknown gunmen, if you ask me, because these are guys who are wielding some dangerous weapons and what have you. Okay, we'll come back to you. Dr. Kabir Adamo, in your opening remarks, you raised a number of very pertinent points, which had to do with the root causes of our security situation at the moment. Now, let's look at the way to solve the problem. According to the Wing Commander, he said, look, tackling the manifestations. Sometime in the past, the president had to, change the military hierarchy in the country, as even requested by the members of the National Assembly to do that, to see whether we can have a better form of response to what the criminals are doing. Would you say that that has changed the situation in terms of tackling the manifestations, as it were?
There have been progress, no doubt. To sit here and say there haven't been progress, I think I won't be fair. But before I even go into that, let me join you in expressing solidarity and sympathy to Alhaji Mustafa and the rest of the families who unfortunately have their loved ones in the hands of this, whoever they are, and join in also praying that they release them hopefully very soon, or they are rescued, as it were, very soon. Now, having said that, after the change of the service chiefs, there has been progress. The current leadership within, especially the military, we've seen an attempt to increase collaboration, cooperation, and coordination. Now, collaboration within the service chiefs themselves, there has been progress in that regard. And then between them and the other security agencies, I would always say that there are about 27 different ministries, departments, and agencies in security. And when we single out the military and give it a responsibility that, frankly, is not just its own, for us to see an improvement in national security, all of these 27 ministries, departments, and agencies will have to function, even if it's not optimally, but at least to a level that we can say would give them pass mark. And in most places, pass mark is 50%. So the question, and that is what worries me, how do we measure currently the performance of these organizations? Unfortunately, in my experience, and I stand to be corrected, there are two other professional guests with me. Do we have a metrics, a measurement mechanism for the performance of these organizations? I'm worried. He is here, and I would say it with all sense of responsibility. After that incident, I'm not aware that, I'm talking of Kaduna train attack, I'm not aware that an investigation has been conducted. I'm not aware that anyone has been held accountable for the death of 9 Nigerians currently. And in fact, we don't even know how many are in the hands of these abducted persons. I'm not aware that any person has been held accountable for that. Now that is, so I'm buttressing my point around accountability and lack of a metric system for measuring performance within the security sector. So I'm very happy that today the National Security Council is going to sit. I'm hoping that that's one of the things that they would discuss. How do we introduce a performance appraisal system within the security system, so that when at the beginning of the year, when we give them 2.4 trillion naira, which is probably the highest in any sector of the economy, we're able to say at the end of the year that, look, this is what you did. Out of the 27 MDAs, this is what each did with the money that was given to it. Anything less than that, believe me, we'll still have this situation with us. If we don't introduce a metric system for measuring the performances of these organizations, so that where there is clear failure, and I'm seeing that failure a lot in these organizations, let that leadership of that organization be held accountable and responsible for that failure. That, for me, should hopefully one of the outcomes I'm hoping to hear and see from the National Security Council. It's a long-term thing, and I wouldn't sit here and pretend that it's something that can happen in one day, but at least let's start the conversation, so that at the end of a period, we can look back and say, thank you for starting this conversation and changing this lack of performance and lack of accountability within the security sector. There are several things I could have said, but all of it is encapsulated into this. If we just concentrate on the symptoms like we've discussed earlier on and don't look at the global picture of why we're where we are, then unfortunately some people have described the security sector as a cesspool. You have a bucket that is leaking and then you just drop the bucket on the water thinking that the leakage will stop. You need to block that leakage even before you drop the bucket. So if we continue to sink money like we're doing at the moment, and that money is not resulting in the kind of improved performances that we would want to see. Unfortunately, that's the kind of discussions we'll continue to have. We'll continue asking the question, why? That's the answer. Let's have something like a searchlight, a performance appraisal system that would ensure at the end of the day, they are accountable to Nigerians. We're the ones who give them that money, so they need to be accountable to us.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Kabir Adamu. You've raised some valid issues here, and of course, hopefully you said you wish the Security Council will look into this, at least as it sits today, and then some other issues regarding insecurity in this country. Major Gabriel, at least you had Dr. Kabir here, at least putting forward some of the few suggestions that could be used. But I'm really interested in the fact that earlier on in your own first or early submission, you gave us a more or less an academic, view of the whole scenario and then the solution to it from that point of view. It seems so very holistic. But at the moment, people are worried about the present insecurity and, of course, the uncertainties surrounding movements, surrounding livelihood, surrounding property, and surrounding everything and everybody else. In your own opinion, I don't know how you want to approach this, but the fact still remains that if we should take your earlier suggestion, it may be too much, or too voluminous an idea or too big an idea to really place for a solution. From your own point of view, what would you say would be the immediate solutions to these problems if we take into cognizance the issue of the even AK-9 train, mishap, and of course those in captivity, why the abductors are even saying that they're not after money. The government knows what they want and they should address it.
Thank you very much. I think teeing up quickly from Kabiru's position on performance indices of the security agencies and the fact that there are about 27 MDAs responsible for security in the country. First, the performance indices that the ordinary Nigerian want to be concerned with are: 1, the frequency of occurrence; 2, the intensity of occurrence; 3, the preventive action taken in their various activities. Haven't said that much for the performance, because of that you can break it down into a certain micro elements that will be for consideration technically on the circumstance. The other thing that amazes me and puts us on notice is the extent of these occurrences. When I mean extent, for example, take the Kaduna train incidents for an instance, where we are told the train was blocked, bombed and blocked, people were taken, transferred from bikes into vehicles and driven away from that scene. That is no longer a petty criminal activity. And now backed up with their demand that is not even on the victims they have taken, but more on we and government. For me, that is a major national challenge. It's insurgency personified and should be dealt with in that perspective. Secondly, taken from the recent past experience where over 300 students were taken away from a school And by my simple logistics calculations, moving 300 students on bikes, you will need at least a minimum of 150 bikes. And if you run around 150 bikes to a location, even if you make several rounds, with our savannah environment, the open country environment in those areas, Kankara, wherever, you will notice that there is no way this couldn't have been noticed by the communities around. How come our reaction time is still not adequate in dealing with issues like this? A very recent one happened in the plateau when a community was attacked. Over 20 people reportedly killed, though the figure keeps, oscillating. It took us over 12 hours to be able to be on the ground to deal with that. These are the performance indices that when we are discussing in greater details the situation, I'm sure they will be brought to bear by the various service chiefs and heads of agencies. However, I want to say this. What is going on now is not just a petty criminal activities here and there. I desire not to call them criminalities because that undervalues the truth of the enormity of what they bring to bear on our society. A fellow who is coming to waylay a train, who is going to invade a community with RPG, that's a rocket-propelled grenade, and coming with GPMGs, LMGs, heavy military-type weapons. That fellow is no longer a criminal. That fellow is a national threat and should be dealt decisively. I just hope we will help the government in place to develop the political will to give the service chiefs, and particularly look, this thing is beyond what the police can handle. We know the limitations of the weaponry of the police, but the police can complement the military by their structural deployment on the ground to provide the necessary workable information. The SSS would do the same. Even the civil defense are expected to do the same. All this, like we earlier mentioned, yes, there is an improvement in their coordination, cooperation, but then there is still more that can be done so that some of these outrageous and very nationally embarrassing experiences will be reduced to the barest minimum in the shortest time possible. That is my take.
Your take is well taken, and I want to return to another professional who is with us, Wing Commander. You earlier raised the issue of tackling the manifestations, and which is what Major Gabriel, spoke to now, and raising more important, issues concerning how they could be tackled, and of course looking at the magnitude of these attacks from different parts of the country. It does appear that, according to him, it's no longer a criminality; it's a national threat. Now, Kabiru Adamu talked about performance appraisal system. You were a professional. You thought you were still a professional. What do you think would have been done the other way around with respect to coordination or collaboration between the security agencies of the country? Could there have been a better way of collaboration that could have led to drastic reduction of the activities of these criminal elements? All right, we have lost his connection. I thought I saw him just a short while ago, and I thought the line is still on with us. All right, now let's take a short break. When we come back, we will continue with the conversation. We've just lost a Wing Commander. I hope he will return before the break is over. Do stay with us.
The Lagos-Ibadan Railway is the first double-track standard gauge railway to be built in West Africa. The Mobolaji Johnson train station is a masterpiece, an infrastructure that is gradually becoming an iconic building in Lagos State. The modern facilities put the station on a world map of train stations. Likewise, other new train stations across the country built to world-class standards. The train and its convenience is indeed an admirable effort, with commendations from Nigerians.
This is a station that we have to commend the federal government for putting a beautiful face, empowering us in Lagos State, not only in economic and political arena.
I can say that I'm really impressed with the infrastructures in place. Kudos to the Minister of Transportations. Kudos to the federal government.
Truly, good things are coming out of Nigeria, and the federal government is deserving of all the applause.
Do you run a breast or cervical cancer service? Are you a private or public laboratory, clinic, or hospital that offer any of breast imaging, cervical cancer screening, HPV vaccination, or other breast or cervical cancer services? Is your service a primary, secondary, or tertiary center located in any part of Nigeria, no matter how remotely located it is? If yes to any of these questions, then subscribe to the OCI Foundation's Save a Breast app and become accessible and visible to millions of Nigerians. It is all for free. To subscribe, just type the Save a Breast application form on Google or go to the OCI Foundation's page on www.ocifoundation.org and search for Save a Breast application form. Complete the form and submit. And let millions of Nigerians patronize you, all for free. Become part of the OCI Foundation's quest to tackle breast and cervical cancers in Nigeria. And join us as we rise by lifting up.
Don't just wake up your child. Wake up the champion in them. Give them energy to help them win every day with Milo at breakfast. Milo Active Go and the natural goodness of malt, milk, and cocoa helps wake up the champion in your child. Milo.
All right, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria. And we are looking at the security challenge in Nigeria. And of course, our guests have spoken and raised some very important points with respect to how the fight has been going on the part of government, and of course, what should be done. Kabiru Adamu, okay, well, we now have Wing Commander Salmanu. I am not sure he had me the first time I tried to bring him in for him to respond. You started by giving an analysis of what may have precipitated the situation we are in at the moment, and you ended with talking about tackling the manifestations. And other guests have raised the importance of collaboration among the security agencies in the country, especially the military, the police, and other uniformed agencies. Now, in your opinion as a professional, could there have been a better way to collaborate among these agencies to ensure that we can really tackle the manifestations properly, kinetically? Because as we also said earlier on, that we need to get them subdued at a point to be able to now perhaps call them on the table for discussions.
Well, thank you so much, and sorry for the interruption. Just to add to what the colleagues there have said, the issue of the metrics of performance indices is very important. However, what is happening is that it's not just good enough for there to be, even if there is a performance index or a metrics or there has to be a clear job description between and among those security agencies. Who is to do what? Where do your responsibilities stop, and where does the next person's responsibility stop? Where are the overlapping areas, and how can you support one another And how do you deconflict in situations where there is that possibility of conflict in carrying out your responsibilities? Then, most importantly for me, is the issues of oversight and function and sanctions. It's not enough for there to be, even if all those things are provided, even all those matrices are ticked, boxes ticked, and so on and so forth. What happens when there is failure? Who is held accountable? Who is held responsible? What are the sanctions that are meted out? And have they been done over the time? Both, from the highest level, but also within those agencies, like the colleague there said, about 27 of them. How do they hold themselves accountable? But also, how is there an oversight from those who are responsible for those oversight functions? Here I'm talking about the legislature, but not only the legislature, the general society, or the Nigerian society. How do we hold these officials accountable? For me, until that is done, until there is a clear means of sanctioning people when they do not perform up to their expected level, things will continue to go the way they are going. I honestly, personally, do not feel that is the issue of resources, as it has been highlighted. There has been so much or enormous resources going into this fight that if you put it side by side with the problems, but also the progress that has been made, you find out that there is still much that is left to be done, and much can be done. So we have the resources. It does in terms of human and otherwise. Government has done a lot. If you look over the years, in the past 5-6 years or even more, there's been a lot of hardware that have been inducted into this into the fight or into the kinetic response. The question is, have we been able to discharge this effectively? And if the answer is yes, so how do we look at the next step, or what is it that we have done that is not right, that is, instead of curtailing these issues, they're increasing? And if no, what have been the actions that have been taken? What are the consequences? Who has paid for what? Who has been held accountable for what? So I feel, for me, until when that is done, a whole of government approach in a way where the legislatures perform their oversight functions or responsibilities and hold those that are supposed to be held accountable, where other aspects or sections or layers or organs of government are also carrying out their assigned responsibilities effectively. Until that is done, honestly, I feel, in my own opinion, we will be going around the same cycle. There's an attack today, for example. There's a response, maybe not an effective response, or even if it's effective, but it doesn't deter those who be attackers, and they do it again because they feel they can get away with it. So we have to look into that and see who is not doing what and what sanctions can be brought to bear. Thank you.
Wing Commander Musa Salmanu, you've made your point, but I'd like you to also look at the issue of tackling, but because I'm just using your word, tackling the manifestations. How do we ensure that these bad Nigerians who are in the forests across the nation and unleashing mayhem on society are tackled militarily? What should be the best approach? Is the approach being embarked upon now not sufficient enough to deal a big blow to them? Should there be other military arrangements that could be utilized either by air, land, or sea, or what have you, to be able to tackle them? Because as long as they are not subdued kinetically, they will continue to unleash mayhem on society. So should there be any form of attack that you would suggest that can ensure that they are humiliated?
Yes, like you said, and like it's been agreed by everyone, that there's been some level of progress made which is in terms of the kinetic firepower that is used, but there is need for improved coordination or improved firepower. Like, for example, it is not enough reason for us to say that if these they are attacked in one theater of operation, say the northeast, that they are able to find their way down to the northwest and perpetrate the same evil, or to perpetrate the same carnage and so on that they do. So we must find a way whereby, in terms of tactically, in terms of on the ground, ensuring that there is a kind of a bridge, or they are not allowed to cross over, or freedom of movement. This is very important, because if they're able to move freely to cause this mayhem across geographical space and so on, you find out that no matter the effort that is put, no matter the firepower that is brought to bear, they can easily sneak out of that theater and go elsewhere, regroup, and attack again. So that capacity or ability for them to do that, to move freely, to be able to regroup, to be able to mobilize themselves again and attack again, must be taken away from them. The only way that can be done is through effective, and coordinated action by both services, that's the Army and the Air Force, predominantly, that are on the ground, but also with other security forces, that's the police and everyone else that is involved. And also the issue of intelligence, that's intelligence gathering, and community involvement. Community involvement in the way that there must be this collaboration or synergy between security forces and the communities, in the way that communities feel actually protected, in a way that if they pass information, these bad gangs will not come after them. They feel confident enough to pass this information to security forces, who now act proactively and in a very fast manner to avoid, to curtail. The whole idea is that you curtail these attacks from happening. If they happen, if by chance that they happen, the response is swift and is able to deter will be perpetrators of this action. But once there is no that swift response, when there is no swift response, when there is no such deterrence, when people feel that the consequences does not outweigh the gain that they are going to have from perpetrating this act, you find out that we continue to have reoccurrence of this. Like I said earlier, it's when they are subdued to a level that they are no longer a threat, then you can now talk of other means or other ways of solving the situation. That's in terms of negotiations, or in terms of sitting round table and finding out who has been wronged, and so on and so forth, and putting other mechanisms in place. So yes, firepower is important, coordinated response is important, and the consequences must be there. It must be made to be there to perpetrators of this act.
Thank you so much, Wing Commander Musa Salman is speaking to us from Nairobi there. Dr. Kabir Adamu, as we round up this program, we're all searching for solutions all over. From this room to other places outside this room, all over this country, people are looking for solutions to insecurity. And gladly, the government is looking at this from a very high level today. Let's talk more about it with the security agencies and the rest of them. That's talking about, even the president yesterday in a press statement said, and I quote him, he said, we have the land, right? And we have the resources, we have the people, but I do not know why people will allow themselves to be successfully subverted to destabilize their own country. This is the president talking here. And of course, this expresses great concern on his part. And of course, sending a big message to Nigerians as to why we as a people should allow ourselves to be successfully subverted.
I would ride on that statement. Subversion is a huge thing in any national security discourse. And it also brings the element of perhaps the grievances I mentioned earlier on. Those who engaged in the subversion or those who manipulate people to encourage the subversion are riding on grievances. And I talked about three major elements of grievances, the political grievance, the economic grievance, and the social grievance. So perhaps one of the major things that we need to do to address this insecurity is to address those grievances. How do we address those grievances? To create the right political environment for participation. I'm very happy that we are addressing that of especially we women, female inclusion into our political space. But then how do we also involve others? In states like Benue, just yesterday I heard or I saw the discourse between the three major ethnic groups in Benue State, how two of the ethnic groups are not happy that they are not given the political space to participate. So those are the kind of grievances that I think we as a country would need to address. How do we open up the space to allow diversity, inclusion, and equity, so that every Nigerian, irrespective of his ethnic, religious, or even economic background, is able to participate actively in the political space? That would, to a larger extent, reduce the capacity of those that are, manipulating the space to encourage subversion. Because, I mean, think about it, a crude politician, and honestly, this squarely lies in the hands of politicians. They are, to a larger extent, responsible for this. They come, they use these divisive elements, both the political, the economic, and the social one, to encourage the subversion. So the best way to take that away from them is to open up the space, encourage inclusion from all aspects of the society. Number two, earlier on I talked about youths. There is this huge pool of youth that unfortunately, out of unemployment, so many things are now just lying there. I mean, our universities are closed at the moment, so youth are at home. And again, they're very easy for you to recruit them. I've seen in places where 2,000 naira, and because of what I do, I know the things. 2,000 naira have been given to youth to go and cause destruction. So how do you also close that? One of the things, and I'm speaking specifically now to the northern governors in particular, how do they inculcate especially skills to these young persons, so that they have something to do with their life? Inculcate skills, open up vocational centers and start teaching these youths certain skills. And then, of course, give them little capital. Sometimes 10,000 naira is all the capital they need so that they become functional. Because once they are functional, it reduces the tendency for them to be recruited by all of this. And then, of course, at the end of the day, the value system. And like I always say, there are four elements that shape the value: the religious institutions, the educational institutions, the media, and then more importantly, the family. Okay. So if we can look at all of this, I'm thinking that this issue of subversion would, to a larger extent, reduce. And it's very important because the drumbeats of the 2023 elections have started. Now, the 2023 elections will exacerbate the security challenges that we have. Okay. We do have them, like we've agreed, we've discussed extensively, but then the elections will exacerbate them because politicians, unfortunately, would use these issues, firstly, to achieve whatever objective they want to achieve, and then others would also attempt to do that. So I'm hoping that as we go into the campaigning proper, these are some of the things, narratives that would.
Okay, Kabiru, let's just pause you there and bring in Major Gabriel Difficult on this issue of subversion, which the president talked about yesterday. Could there be that some Nigerians are making this country ungovernable by perhaps providing some level of assistance to the terrorists or kidnappers that we have, because we've had in the past that some persons, not necessarily communities, but some persons in the military or police, as the case may be, have a way of conniving with these elements. Last week we heard about a police personnel who was caught supplying arms to the bandits.
I'm glad I didn't want to speak on the president's speech concerning this element of subversion. And that was why I placed it on that fundamental consideration where we are talking about the fabrics of existence of the nation called Nigeria. For you to have this kind of subversive activities growing in such enormity, down to the individual role play, like the case of this policeman or whoever, security agent, that was supplying arms to there is a fundamental fracture in how much does the average Nigerian buy into the country called Nigeria. It might sound academic, but I want to let you know that how much do we identify ourselves with this nation? From my experience running out of Nigeria, it's like Nigerians are better Nigerians when they are outside the country than when they are within the country. Because out there, they have a common position. In here, do we have that common position? But quickly going to the issue of preventive measures, I want to quickly state this. As much as we equip the counter-offensive operations, if we don't back it up with adequate, not intelligence gathering alone, because so much emphasis has been put on intelligence gathering, and from information available to us, we know that there is enormous intelligence gathering in this country. Intelligence dissemination to the units that will do the necessary work at the required time. These are some of the nitty-gritties, the technical nitty-gritties that we need to probably work on again. If we do that, I can assure you with the disposition of our security organizations now, particularly the military, if we give them timely, adequate information, I can assure you they will do better than we are experiencing. And they would, if you notice, the narrative in the Northeast has changed drastically in the last couple of months from wait and be attacked to go there, deal with them even before they attack. What you call preemptive strikes. That is the kind of thing that will build back confidence in the system. But you cannot do that without adequate and timely security.
For your contribution this morning. We really had a great deal of information and very decisive contributions from you this morning. Major Gabriel Adifiku, retired, immediate past Secretary General of Retired Army, Navy, and Air Force Officers Association. Thank you once again for being part of the program. We're running out of time. I didn't know we could have actually talked on so many other points. Ali Mahmoud, spokesman, families of the victims of AK9 train incident. Thank you for coming. We're looking forward to the release of those victims. Dr. Kabira Demo, as always, we're glad for your very informative contribution this morning on the topic. And via Zoom, we had from Nairobi Wing Commander Musa Salmanu, retired security expert. We also want to appreciate you for waking up with us this morning and being part of our show. All right, before we go, let's take some foreign tidbits.
Well, it seems to have some technical issues here, but all the same, you can bear with us. We may not be able to have the sports or foreign for you, but bear with us in subsequent bulletins. These ones are going to feature well. Oh, we thank you so much, and it seems as if the director said that the foreign tidbits is on, and we may want to watch it. Take a listen.
The Russian Defense Ministry has given Ukrainian fighters who are in an industrial complex in the besieged port city of Mariupol a fresh ultimatum. Russia's armed forces, based purely on humanitarian principles, propose that the fighters of nationalist battalions and foreign mercenaries cease their military operations on 20th April and lay down arms, the Russian Defense Ministry said. Russian-backed fighters are reportedly trying to storm the Azovstal steelworks in Mariupol, where Ukrainian troops and civilians are said to be holding out. In a post on Telegram, the Mariupol City Council said that despite the advantage of the many Russian troops in the city, they still have not been able to take Mariupol, and so they want to level the steel plant. It further said that Russia was not deterred by the fact that civilians are also taking refuge in the complex. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said the situation remained as tough as possible without any changes, and the fate of tens of thousands of civilians remains unknown. Meanwhile, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres is calling for a 4-day humanitarian ceasefire in Ukraine so that civilians could leave the areas of confrontation and humanitarian assistance could be delivered freely. He said more than 12 million people are in dire need of humanitarian assistance in Ukraine, and the number is expected to increase soon.
That's Good Morning Nigeria for you today. Join us again tomorrow for another episode. I'm Yusuf Nadabusu.
And I'm Kieran Umayo. Thank you for watching and have a great day.
From dusk to dawn, 24 hours of entertainment. Tune in to DSTV channel 251, GoTV channel 91, Preview UK channel 264, or you can download www.visiontv.co.uk. App for iOS or Android, Intelsat 901 degree east. You can also see us on Facebook and YouTube for quality content on